Hey, welcome to the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to be creating a social media post that pops. And we're going to be building from the last lesson, and we're going to use typography again, but use it in a slightly different way. So I found two examples on the internet that we're going to be drawing inspiration from. So the first one, it's an event poster where we have these slanted, distorted typography describing the event, but they're in context of what's going on. So they are aligned with the ring ropes here, and it creates a very powerful and dynamic image. And the second one, using the same technique, it's a Nike poster where the word so fast is aligned with the train tracks. So again, it's in context with what's going on in the image, and it's a very simple but powerful image. For this exercise, we're going to be using this really cool stock image I found of the Golden Gate Bridge. And we're going to be first importing this into our Photoshop. And to do that, you can simply click and drag it into your Photoshop like this. Okay, we have it open. And the first thing I want to do, because we're imitating these two posters, which are both black and white, is that we're going to turn this into a black and white image. So while this layer is selected, what we want to do now is click on Image, Adjustment, Hue/Saturation, and we're going to drag this saturation all the way down to black and white. And now we have this cool vintage looking black and white image. And now we're going to be adding text. So just like we learned from the last lesson, click the text tool here on the sidebar or T on the keyboard. And we're going to build a text box by clicking and dragging it across the screen. And as usual, you're going to have the Lorem Ipsum placeholder text here. And we're just going to delete it. And we're going to write the word San Francisco. And the text here was already yellow, but just like we learned in the last lesson, you can always turn it into another color like this. But I'm gonna turn it back to yellow because I like this old school movie poster vibe that the yellow gives you. So now we have one text box here. I'm just gonna drag it down here for now. The font size looks good. And then what we're going to do is we're gonna create another line. And let's say something like where based in. So this could be a promotional poster for your company saying what city you're in against a backdrop of a cool landmark. So now we have two lines here, and we're going to be distorting them so that it aligns with the bridge here. And the easiest method I found to distort the text boxes is to rasterize them first. So I'm going to show you what rasterizing is and means. So first, let's try to distort the San Francisco layer. We're going to be clicking the San Francisco layer, and we're going to right click on the mouse and click rasterize type. So when you rasterize something, it means that in this case, it's no longer a text box. So if I try to double click this layer, we're not going to be able to enter back into the text box and able to edit it like we can with the where based in layer. So here it's a text box, editable text. But with San Francisco, it's an image, just like this background layer here. So these two now have the same property. It's not a text box anymore. Okay, but what if you made a mistake? So this is a good time for you to learn how to use the History tab. So the History tab you can find on Windows, and you click on history, and it's going to show you your last 10 moves or so, and you can freely choose which step you were at before. So it's kind of like a Control Z undo shortcut, but it's in a panel. So going back to where we were, rasterize type, I can go one move up, and suddenly, magically, the San Francisco layer becomes an editable text box again. So this is useful in case you realize you had a spelling error or you want to change something about the text. So this is one way of doing it. The other way you can do it is by having an copy of the layer you want to rasterize. So the way you can do that is to have your layer selected, and then you right click the layer, and then you find the duplicate layer button here, and it's gonna ask you what name you want to name it, and San Francisco copy is fine by me, and then you're gonna click OK. And what happens now is that you now have another layer of San Francisco, which is exactly the same as before, and we're going to click this eye icon here on the left, and it's now hidden. So now let's say you rasterize this, and for some reason you messed up this layer, and it's no longer even like savable. You can just simply delete this layer and have this layer as a backup. So this is useful because with history, there is a limited amount of moves that it remembers. So maybe you've gone too far into the number of moves, and you can't go back to where it was originally. So it's always useful to have a backup copy like this. So we're going to duplicate this again, and let's name this San Francisco. So this will become our main layer, and we're going to be hiding San Francisco copy. And we're going to rasterize this, so it's now an image layer, not a text layer. And I'm going to show you how to distort this image layer. And the way you do that is to hold down Control on your keyboard and hover your mouse over one of these white squares on the edge. You're going to click and hold the sides, and you're going to just move around on your mouse up and down, and this is how you distort an image. So we're going to try to align this to the Golden Gate Bridge. So we're going to move this up here, and we're going to be moving this down here, and we're going to be moving the top right corner like this, and the bottom right corner like this, until it kind of aligns. So it's just a trial and error exercise. Until something looks good. So that looks pretty good. So now that we're finished, I'm going to click enter on my keyboard, and this will exit out of the distortion mode, and you have your distorted text. So I think that's looking really cool already. And now let's rasterize the top line we're based in and do the same again. So click this layer, rasterize, and we're going to be doing the same thing, except we're gonna use a slightly different method or shortcuts on the keyboard. So instead of just clicking Control on your keyboard, try clicking Control and Shift at the same time while dragging this and see what happens. So you'll find that instead of just being able to move it uniformly like you would when you only click Control, when you hold Control and Shift together, you're able to move it in whatever direction you want. And this is probably an easier way of doing things. So I'm gonna do this for this line here. So I would just move this until it looks more or less correct. So I think that looks okay. I'm just going to tinker it a little bit. So the key with something like this is that you want the slanting of the letters to be very close to similar or the same. So you want the slant of, let's say, this F to be the same as the slant of this B here. And also every letter as well. And press enter, and to view the whole thing without this selection box, I'm going to press background to see the clean image. And I don't know about you, but I think this looks pretty cool. But looking at it again, it looks like my perspectives are slightly off. I think what I want to have here is to have this line at the edge of F and B to be aligned with the Golden Gate Bridge line here. So I'm gonna try to adjust both of these lines at the same time. So the way we do that is to click one layer and hold Shift on your keyboard and click the other layer. And now you see that you're able to distort and manipulate both of these layers at the same time. Gonna do the same exercise as before, but trying to get this perspective looking more aligned with the bridge. We're not gonna get it perfect because in this image the bridge is actually curved and we have straight text here. We don't have curved text, so it's not going to be perfect, but in this scenario, good enough is good enough. So something that looks fairly close to what we want, it's good enough. Okay, and maybe we should actually shift the whole thing a little bit more so it goes from one end of the bridge to the other end of the bridge. And actually, I just had a new idea. what if we keep the iconicness of this bridge visible by using the middle of the bridge here to split off where and Baston and San and Francisco. So these two words will be on one side of the middle, and these three words will be on the other side of this middle part of the bridge. And in order to do that, we're going to be splitting these layers in two sides. So we could go back and create 4 separate text layers, but that's gonna be too time consuming, and I want to just use what we already have to create this gap in between here. And the easiest way to do that is to first combine these 2 layers into a single layer. So we already have these layers selected. What we need to do now is to right click, and we're going to click merge layers. And now if you click the move tool, you'll see that these 2 layers have now been merged into one. And now we want to split this into 2 in the middle here. And in order to do that, we are going to be using a new tool right here called the polygonal lasso tool. So click it, and how this works is that it's a selection tool. So you click on your mouse to start the selection, and then you click the other points of where you want to select. So because I want to split off this part, I'm selecting the right side, and I'm going to close off this loop by moving my mouse cursor to the start of the selection. And once you see this circle next to the mouse cursor here, it means that you're ready to close that loop. And once you click it, you'll see that this is selected by it flashing and moving like this. And now if we want to split this side from the other, what we need to do is click hold Control and X on the keyboard, and then Control V again on the keyboard. And now you see that we have 2 layers again, except that this layer 1 is what we just selected. So I'm going to be renaming this layer into right side. Oh, spelling mistake. Right side, and this side to be left side. And we want to do the same distortion exercise as before. To correct this perspective, more or less. Okay, gonna play around with that even more. And I think it's fine to have it overlap the middle part a little bit. And actually, I actually prefer how it looked before, because now the spacing in between the words looks a bit weird, but doesn't matter because that's the beauty in working with Photoshop. It's all one experimentation. So I'm going to see if I can click on history and jump back to what we had before. So we want to jump back to before the polygonal lasso, and we can go back to what we had before, and just gonna further tinker with it and press enter, and actually, yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Now, the last thing we want to do to make this image pop even more is to make the middle shadows of the background image a bit stronger. So having the background image selected, going to go to image adjustment, and I'm going to choose levels. I'm gonna be explaining this in more detail at a later lesson on image editing or photo editing, but all you need to know now is that it adjusts the kind of darkness of the images by you dragging these buttons, these knobs here, and you can play with it until you find something you like. So now I think this really pops, and I want to also crop it a little bit because the spacing on the right seems a bit too big right now. So we're going to use this crop tool here, or C on the keyboard, as a shortcut, and you see this crop box here, and what you need to do is you drag it across so that the text is more or less central, and when you find a crop you like, just press enter on the keyboard, and now you have something that looks pretty cool. And all we need to do now is to save it as a JPEG. So area of Golden Gate poster. I'll have the quality to maximum or 12, press OK. And there you have it. Using slanted typography to make an interesting poster or social media post that pops. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.